Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. Mufti Mohammad Sayeed's death has created an unexpected and worrying vacuum in Kashmir. His daughter and heir Mehbooba has so far refused to be sworn in as Chief Minister, and as a result, governor's rule has been declared. As of now, no one knows how long this could last, but Kashmir is a sensitive state where many believe militancy is slowly but steadily rising. So is this pause in governance understandable or irresponsible? Meanwhile, there are reports that Congress is trying to lure Mehbooba Mufti and that the BJP is worried. There are also reports that Mehbooba has set conditions which the BJP could find difficult to accept. So tonight we focus on the political situation in Kashmir. In part 2, I shall talk to 3 leading experts about the developing situation. But first, an interview with the leader of the opposition and the working president of the National Conference, former Chief Minister Omar Abdullah. Omar Abdullah, let me start with the political situation following the sudden death of Mufti Mohammad Sayeed. Just 10 months after the BJP and PDP formed a government with 53 out of 87 seats in the assembly, the state is without an elected government and governor's rule has been imposed. In these circumstances, is this understandable or unfortunate?
Well, I think it's a combination of both understandable and unfortunate. I think I can understand Mehbooba Mufti's reluctance in the face of what is clearly overwhelming grief at the demise of her father. But I think it's also unfortunate that that grief has led to a situation where we have no government, so to speak, and governor's rule has been imposed.
In fact, the truth is, this is not the first time in India that the child of a sitting chief minister is supposed to succeed a chief minister who's died. That happened in 1982 when your father succeeded your grandfather Sheikh Abdullah. Nationally, it happened in 1984 when Rajiv Gandhi succeeded Indira Gandhi. In this case, however, Mehbooba Mufti has chosen to first postpone the swearing in for what one thought were the 4 days of traditional mourning. Now that that mourning is over, it seems she may not be sworn in for another week or even 10 days. What do you make of this delay that seems to be expanding rather than contracting?
See, I have no reason to assume anything other than the fact that this is a byproduct of the grief that she's coming to terms with. Yes, it's true, we've had transitions of leadership at the state level or at the central level, but those have been much smoother and much swifter. In this case, Mehbooba, for reasons best known to her, has opted not to follow the advice of her party and has stayed away from government formation. Look, I know that the state government as it is ceased to exist with the demise of Mufti Mohammad Sayeed Sahab, but the alliance didn't. As far as I understand, it was an alliance between the PDP and the BJP, not an alliance between individuals that would have ceased to exist with the demise of Mufti Mohammad Sayeed Sahab. So the alliance is still in place. The terms and conditions that were negotiated for that alliance to be formed are also in place. It's only that you have a reluctant head who is unwilling at this point to come forward and take oath of office.
So are you suggesting that the more appropriate course of action, if Mehbooba Mufti herself is reluctant for personal or emotional reasons to step in immediately, was to appoint a caretaker chief minister from the alliance so that the elected government could continue?
Well, given that, as I said, there has been no indication to the contrary as to the continuance of the alliance. Look, a lot of people are fishing in troubled waters. Your introduction suggested as much. There are any number of rumors doing the rounds here, including a rumor that I'm supposed to have met the Prime Minister in Delhi before I flew back to Srinagar yesterday, which is totally untrue. So in a situation like this, where there is clearly a political vacuum and a whole load of uncertainty, there will be any number of people who will try and fish in troubled waters for various reasons, whether from within the PDP, whether from within the alliance partner, the BJP, or as you suggested, from certain quarters within the Congress party as well, none of which is healthy for Jammu and Kashmir. This uncertainty does not, no state will benefit from an atmosphere of uncertainty. Least of all, Jammu and Kashmir. Case in point being, you have an encounter that is going on, that is raging right now on the outskirts of Srinagar city, in which one militant is reportedly dead in this encounter, and another one has been trapped. Now look, these are situations that can emerge at any time. Law and order situations can develop as a result of these anti-militancy operations. You need a government and an accountable government in place that can deal with situations like this.
In other words, you're saying that the absence of an elected accountable government is giving an unnecessary advantage to militancy, which anyway has been on the rise in Jammu and Kashmir for the last year or so. That in other words, the absence of an elected government is particularly unfortunate given the prevailing circumstances of the moment.
It just makes decision making that much more complicated. I mean, even the governor, now understand the governor's predicament. He has no idea whether he's going to be governing for a day, a week, or a month. So at the moment, he's pretty much just occupying a position without affecting any major decisions. This is also the last quarter of the financial year. Planning releases have to be made. A budget has to be finalized and passed before the end of the financial year. There are a whole host of regular governance-related issues, independent of the security and law and order situation that the state finds itself in.
So does this mean that actually governance is at a standstill and that critical decisions that should be taken are not being taken?
Well, absolutely. I think the governor has instructed the chief secretary that no changes are to be affected. And I think regular day-to-day decisions will be taken, but nothing beyond that.
Which means the state will lose out then, won't it?
Well, at the moment, we don't have a government, so to speak. So yes, there is nothing that will happen for the time being.
One more question about Mehbooba.
Look, I fully understand and I sympathize. No, I fully understand and I sympathize with the predicament that Mehbooba finds herself in. I can't imagine a worse set of circumstances under which she might have to take over. But unfortunately, I mean, man proposes and God disposes. She hasn't got to choose the circumstances under which this transition is to take place.
Except that the circumstances are fairly similar to the ones that prevailed in 1982 when your grandfather died and your father took over. And if I recall correctly, he took over within hours.
That's true, he did. He took over within hours of my grandfather passing away. If you look at the case of Rajiv Gandhi, he took over before Indira Gandhi's body had been removed from the hospital to be laid in state and then cremated.
One of the criticisms about what's happening at the moment is some people say Mehbooba Mufti is allowing her personal grief to take precedence over the constitutional requirements of either governance or administration. Is that criticism a bit harsh, or is it grounded in an undeniable truth?
Well, while there is an element of truth to that, I think it would be unfair to sort of criticize Mehbooba for what is clearly, I mean, an undeniable sense of deep grief. So, I mean, I can understand where she's coming from.
Let's broaden our discussion, because politics, much like nature, abhors a vacuum, and there is intense speculation, particularly in Srinagar, but it's now caught on in Delhi as well, whether the PDP-BJP alliance will continue. This morning, Muzaffar Hussain Beg was quoted by First Post to say the following: his, meaning Mufti's passing away, has provided us an opportunity to make a fresh start. What's your hunch? Will this alliance continue? Is this just speculation? Or is there something more happening under the surface that could either break the alliance or alter its shape and form from what it's been?
Look, as I said right in the beginning, this was an alliance between political parties and not individuals. And therefore, the fact that Mufti Mohammad Sayeed Sahab is no more should not in fact impact the alliance between the PDP and the BJP. Let's also understand that Mehbooba Mufti was and continues to remain the president of the PDP, and therefore was a willing participant in the negotiations and the structuring of the alliance that led to Mufti Mohammad Sayeed Sahab taking over as Chief Minister. Therefore, I mean, for Muzaffar Beg to suggest that this is now an opportunity to make new beginnings would be to suggest that what Mufti Mohammad Sayeed did was wrong, and that somewhere Mufti Mohammad Sayeed Sahab erred or was mistaken in tying up with the BJP. Now, if that is something that Mehbooba and her party are willing to accept, then by all means go ahead.
What you're saying is that any attempt to change the nature, shape and form of the alliance at this point after Mufti Sahab's death would be like suggesting that Mufti Sahab got it wrong, and this is therefore an opportunity to correct the lapses or mistakes he made. This would therefore be a reflection on him rather than on the alliance.
Oh, absolutely it would be. I would be the first person to arrive at the conclusion that if any changes are affected or any fresh negotiations take place, then clearly Mufti Mohammad Sayeed Sahab got it wrong. And that will be his lasting legacy, that his own party and his successors have basically poo-pooed everything that he did in the last year of his life, so to speak.
But the truth of the matter is that although it was never said publicly, most people are aware that Mehbooba Mufti had serious reservations about the alliance and greater qualms about the way in which it had worked in the last 10 months than her father.
I wouldn't be able to hazard a guess on that. It's very easy to sort of speak on the basis of hearsay, but as I said, I mean, Mehbooba, president of the PDP, she was a willing partner in this alliance. She was the one who met the BJP president Amit Shah when the negotiations were concluded. She was very much part of the swearing-in ceremony. She was very much part of the Prime Minister's mega announcement of the 80,000 crore package in Srinagar. So nothing publicly would suggest that she was anything but in favor of this arrangement or relationship.
Now, there are also reports that she wants assurances from the BJP on 3 or 4 specific counts before she agrees to step in as become Chief Minister. Apparently, she wants an assurance that issues like Article 370B for the state flag won't be raised as controversies. She wants an assurance that she will serve the full remaining term as Chief Minister and there's no talk of a rotation of the job. She even possibly, by some accounts, wants the Deputy Chief Ministership to be done away. Is it wise to seek such assurances at this moment when the actual governance of the state is at stake?
I think the only assurances she should seek are that the agenda for alliance that the BJP and the PDP negotiated, on which she and her father signed off, and the government came into place, will be followed in letter and spirit. I think any further negotiation will then open the doors to the BJP to try and negotiate. Please understand, this is not Mufti Sayeed who's taking over. It's an untried and untested Mehbooba Mufti. And therefore, if she were to reopen what was otherwise a closed chapter, what stops them from reopening it? And then anything is possible.
How do you respond to the view that by being reluctant and by delaying taking over, she's actually strengthening her hand vis-a-vis the BJP? Because many people believe this is creating tension and consternation within the BJP, who far more than her don't want the alliance to break.
That, I think, would be a question that the BJP would have to answer. I again would sort of go back to what I tweeted yesterday. I don't believe, at least up until yesterday or this morning, that what Mehbooba is doing is anything but a byproduct of extreme grief. I don't believe that the person I saw weeping by her father's graveside yesterday morning would be the same person who would come back home, lock herself up in a room and start calculating the next chess move that she wants to make on this political chessboard. I mean, either she's an absolute phenomenal actress, which I don't believe to be true, or then what you're seeing is not political gamesmanship or brinkmanship, but is actually the byproduct of extreme grief.
People say that the great virtue of the BJP-PDP alliance is that it politically unites Jammu and the Valley, which voted not just differently but almost in polar opposite directions at the last state elections. And if that alliance breaks up, nothing that could take its place could bridge the state in the same way. Would you accept that that is a good reason for maintaining the alliance for the next 4 or 5 years?
Well, I think the best reason for maintaining the alliance at the moment is for the two constituents of the alliance to pay respect to the architect of that alliance. I mean, Mufti Mohammad Sayeed was the architect of what he called the coming together of the North Pole and the South Pole. So if you want to pay respect and regard to the late leader, the best way to do that is to continue what was his last legacy.
In other words, any attempt to change the shape and form would be disrespect to Mufti Saab's last legacy.
Any effort to change the shape, size or form of what Mufti Sayeed was leading would be to admit that Mufti Sayeed was wrong, and that will be his lasting legacy, not anything else.
Finally, many people have interpreted Sonia Gandhi's gesture of visiting Srinagar and personally meeting Mehbooba Mufti as possibly part of a political strategy to lure Mehbooba Mufti. How do you, A, view that possibility, and B, can it succeed?
You know, from what little I know of Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, I think politics and the possibility of breaking up the PDP-BJP alliance would have been the last thing on her mind when she came to Srinagar. I think that it's no secret that Mrs. Gandhi and Mehbooba developed a very close working relationship when the PDP and the Congress were in alliance. Also, Mrs. Gandhi is aware of the long history that Mufti Saab had as a member of the Congress party, working with her late husband, her late mother-in-law, and other senior members of the Congress. I think her visit to Srinagar was purely a reflection of that. There are, I believe, lower-level functionaries in the Congress that would like to have you believe that this was more political than a humanitarian gesture, but I don't believe there was even an iota of politics in Mrs. Gandhi's intentions.
And that argument probably would be reinforced by the fact that even if the two were to get together, they only have between them 40 seats, which is short of a majority. And they'd either have to rely on independents and others, and that would still be a very weak government, or they might have to look to you and your 15 MLAs for support. Would you be willing to support them from outside? I know you can't join them from the inside because Mehbooba is your great rival, but would you support them from the outside as perhaps a return favor for the fact that Congress kept you in power for 6 years?
You know, I had made an offer of support to Mufti Sahab and the PDP in the immediate aftermath of the assembly elections about 12 months ago. That offer of support was turned down by the PDP on the basis of certain sort of a reading of the situation. The way I see it, that situation hasn't changed, and therefore the logic or the reasoning that led to Mufti Sahab turning down our offer stands true today as well. So I don't see why I should be making any fresh approaches to the PDP for any sort of understanding or working relationship as such. If there is a change of thinking within the PDP, then it's for them to reflect that, not for me.
In other words, if they want your support, they have to knock on your door. You're not going to offer it unilaterally a second time.
The National Conference has been voted into the opposition. It's a role we've carried out for the last 1 year. It's a role we're happy to carry out for the life of this assembly.
Suppose Mrs. Sonia Gandhi were to say to you, Omar, support us from outside, make sure that an alternative is given to the state other than the BJP, PDP. Would you heed Mrs. Gandhi's request?
No, I think we're getting into the realm of the hypothetical right now. Nothing that I have seen or heard would suggest to me that Mrs. Gandhi will be making any such approach. I don't believe that even she would want to capitalize on the misfortune or the grief that Mehbooba and her party find themselves in right now. So I'd be very surprised. In fact, I'd be downright amazed if I was to receive a phone call of the sort that you've just outlined.
Yes, but you're still not saying you're going to say no if you get that call.
You know, gone are the days when I gave categorical answers to hypothetical questions.
You've answered it for me. You've left open the smallest window of possibility to intrigue everyone, as we sign off. My thanks to you, Omar Abdullah, for agreeing to talk to us and for being so open and candid. Welcome back. You're watching To The Point. I'm now joined by three of India's top experts on Kashmir: the former editor of the Times of India, Dilip Madgankar, former chairman of the Minorities Commission and former Chief Information Commissioner, Wajahat Habibullah, and the former Vice Chancellor of the Islamic University of Science and Technology, Siddiq Wahid. Professor Wahid, let's start with the fact that there is a political vacuum in Kashmir because Mehbooba Mufti, her father's successor, refuses to take over, and therefore governor's rule has been declared. Is this, in the circumstances, understandable, or do you fear that Mehbooba Mufti has put her personal grief ahead of her political and constitutional responsibilities?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know about putting personal grief before everything else, because personal grief has a way of occupying the vacuum, so to speak. But at the same time, I find it fairly understandable that there should be this vacuum, as you put it. And the reason for that is very simple. This has been a troubled coalition. Let's admit that right from the get-go. It has been a coalition of opposites, where the opposites have not been able to meet and find a meeting ground, number one. Number two is that the expectation on the part of the PDP was support vis-a-vis funding, support vis-a-vis various kinds of help that was needed in terms of the floods, etc. That has not been forthcoming. And number three, basically promises not kept. And the other portion is that the PDP over the last year has lost considerable ground in its main constituency, which is Kashmir.
So there are good reasons to pause and think whether you want to continue with the alliance.
Absolutely. I think that there are good reasons and we need to bear with that. And the other reason is, of course, the grief, which is something that you have to take into account.
But you're almost suggesting that behind the facade of the grief, and I'm not minimizing the grief at all, there is actually a fundamental rethink of whether this alliance should continue, and if it should, on what terms and basis.
I would say, I don't think that there is a facade. I think there's grief, but and I know you qualified that. But at the same time, I think, yes, there is a rethink, and I think there should be.
Dilip Madgankar, I want to bring you in on that very key important point. To buttress, in a sense, the interpretation you're hearing from Professor Siddiq Wahid is a comment that Muzaffar Beg made today to First Post. He said, and I'm quoting him, his, meaning Mufti's passing away, has provided us an opportunity to make a fresh start. Do you believe that the reason Mehbooba Mufti is taking her time, and actually possibly it's now said she could take another week to 10 days, is because she's actually reformulating the alliance, changing its shape, changing its architecture to something more acceptable?
Well, it's obvious to me that she is positioning herself to deal with the BJP on her own terms. By this, I mean that the BJP has been making some noises about different kinds of portfolios, senior portfolios, and so on and so forth. This is one. Secondly, as Professor Wahid just said, she's again got to make sure that the alienation of her core constituency is halted. And that would mean that she will have to redouble her efforts to make sure that even while remaining on the right side of the union government, she gets Delhi to deliver on the promises that they've made. So I think this period of grief, the time that she's taking, is really to reposition herself. She already has made sure that the entire party is with her, which is significant because there have been murmurs of dissent within the party. But now it appears to me that she's made sure that the party machine is with her. And now it's from that position that she's going to talk to the BJP and make sure that the alliance lasts. She's the one who's going to put her stamp, her cachet on this coalition.
This brings to mind the point that Omar Abdullah made in part one, where he said that if what is happening at the moment is a reformulating of the alliance, changing of its architecture, changing of the terms on which the BJP and PDP came together, then in a real sense, this is a slight to Mufti Sahib himself, because he was the architect, and it's like saying the alliance he put together was incorrect. And it's those mistakes, those lapses are being corrected. Is his legacy, in other words, being questioned?
You see, I would agree with you that if this was the case, that would be the case. And although I would agree with Siddiq Sahab about the weaknesses in the present coalition, and also with Dilip on what he says, the coalition needs to be, the relationship between centre and state needs to be recalibrated. But I don't think that those are reasons for actually not taking over as Chief Minister. I think the reasons, as Omar has mentioned, is grief. Also, I think this is a very dignified way of handling it, because she sent out a message to her own constituents that she is not a person who's lusting for power. She is a person who would like to give them a good government, and as long as she feels that she is recovering from her father's father and has been attested to.
If this is a dignified way of handling the transition, then are you suggesting by implication that Rajiv Gandhi, who got sworn in hours after his mother died, and Farooq Abdullah, who got sworn in hours after his father died, were undignified?
Ah, yes, I was waiting for that question. In both cases, I happen to know there was a question as to who would take over. Questions were raised as to who would take over. At the time that Mrs. Indira Gandhi was assassinated, the country was naturally in crisis because you had a prime minister assassinated. You could not have. But here, in this case, there's clarity as to who is taking over. It's only a question of process. And being under governor's rule is no great disaster. I've served under governor's rule.
Let's come back, Professor White, to this key question about what elements of this alliance need to be reformulated. Because if you're right in suggesting that whilst there is real, genuine, and truly understandable grief, nonetheless, this is also providing a very opportune moment to rethink an alliance and a very clever way of doing it. What are the areas where you think Mehbooba Mufti would want changes?
I think the reasons that she's herself spelt out, which is that will you stop bringing up Article 370 and would you stop eroding the sort of, the whole pattern of governance that we have by bringing up other questions and so forth, and generally polarizing the state as a whole. And I think that is the key. There are other issues, of course, and that is the stand on Article 370, which the agenda for alliance really doesn't say anything about, except to say that we won't touch it. But that, of course, has not been the case either. So I think that there's very little sort of meeting ground anyways, and so therefore a difficult question. At the minimum, the BJP needs to adhere to what Mehbooba Mufti has been asking for, number one. Number two, certainly not on the part of the BJP sort of up its ante, as rumors have it, that they want a rotational chief ministership. I mean, these are...
Dilip Wadankar, whilst it's perfectly understandable, and I'm sure the BJP would even expect it, that Mehbooba Mufti would be upset at the time that was taken to make funds available, the slowness with which flood relief happened, the slowness with which that package happened, I presume what the BJP would find more difficult to accept is the alleged demand, and I repeat that word alleged, that she wants the deputy chief ministership done away with. That she wants the BJP to drop issues like Article 370 or the dual flag or the beef issue. Because all of those are issues that appeal to its core constituency in Jammu, and it would find it very hard to jettison them. How do you think the BJP will respond if those are really sticking points that Mehbooba is laying down and not just press speculation?
Well, Karan, first of all, let's go back to the common minimum program that the two parties put together. I think Mehbooba will want a very strict adherence to that program and would not brook any kind of deviation from it. On the other hand, even as she does so, she would want to address the core concerns of her own constituency. And those concerns are, one, absolutely no talk of any kind of fiddling around with Article 370, of delivering on the promises regarding development goals. Also, Karan, it seems to me that I'm sure you take this up a little later, but I think the current situation in Pakistan is again something that both Delhi and Mehbooba will have to pay attention to, because that will tell you how far each side can go to test each other's intentions. My own assessment is that Mehbooba will take over soon, that she will be a tougher negotiator vis-a-vis the BJP, but that she would know how far to go too far. Because every government in Srinagar has to be on the right side of the union government. And that is something that she's perfectly well aware of.
Is there in fact a problem with Mehbooba Mufti herself in BJP eyes? It had been speculated a couple of months ago that her father, Mufti Mohammad Sayeed, wanted his daughter to take over earlier. And again, it's speculated that the BJP was reluctant. Do you know more about that?
Well, there was this, the Mufti has not been well for some time, and there was this, what I had heard was that he had been wanting to go for treatment abroad, and then while he was absent to leave his daughter as chief minister, that in the view, so I heard, I mean, this is not substantiated, but I had heard that the coalition had not agreed to that, because normally the course would be that if the chief minister is out of station, the deputy chief minister takes over and hopes, and possibly that may have been a reason why he hadn't gone. But that is really only against supposition.
Could that be a reason that in Mehbooba's eyes led to her father's death, the fact that he couldn't go abroad for treatment when he thought he needed it?
Well, I wouldn't know that. That you would have to ask her. But the question is, all the issues that have been raised as to her doubts and the apprehensions, and I would agree with all of those. In fact, I would go so far as to support what Siddiq Sahab had said about the alienation because of this, because you will notice that the recrudescence of militancy which you have been mentioning, it is largely coming out of South Kashmir. But these issues could all be addressed while she was chief minister. They did not have to delay her actually taking over as chief minister, because as Omar mentioned,
that's a criticism of her. She's delaying it, not the BJP.
Well, that's right. But
so you're criticizing her there?
No. The point is that I'm not criticizing her that she's not taking over because of these reasons. Because I'm only saying that these are reasons
that could have been handled after she took over.
After she took over.
Has she, in a way, tactically, maybe even strategically, strengthened her hand by being reluctant to take over? Because what's emerging side by side is reports that the BJP is tense, getting a little worried, concerned perhaps that the alliance may disappear. Congress is starting to fish in troubled waters and add to the BJP's apprehensions. Is this strengthening Mehbooba, or does it have no impact on the nature of the alliance?
I think it's strengthening her hand. But I don't think that it is by design. I think that it is by the fact that there are real problems in the relationship.
It's not by design. This is, in other words, this delay is not deliberate. It's a good fallout, but not intended.
Absolutely. This is what I believe. I mean, I have no inside information, I should tell you. And I want to see it that way, perhaps, and that's the reason. And I think that this is why, it's a valuable pause from my sort of perspective.
But a pause that wasn't strategically actually thought through in the way we are talking.
I would think not. No.
Dilip Pathankar, come in on that one very quickly. A strategic, deliberately, carefully calculated pause to strengthen her hand by increasing the frustration, desperation and concern and worry of the BJP, or just an unintended but very welcome fallout?
I think it's a bit of both, Karan. It's a bit of both. I think what has come to pass suits Mehbooba eminently. It strengthens her position. And as I said earlier, she's going to be pressing for a certain number of things that she's been expressing quite overtly. Let's not forget that apart from Sonia Gandhi, Nitin Gadkari also met her. And if you see Nitin Gadkari's statement that we are here to fulfill all the dreams of Mufti Saab, I mean, that is the kind of reassurance that was given to her. The question there is that Mr. Gadkari has spoken about development issues and governance issues and so on. But I think central also to Mehbooba's concerns is what happens to the larger political debate regarding the relationship between JNK and the centre. And here I think she's the one who's been far more articulate about the PDP's document on this subject, the document of self-rule. Probably this is jumping the gun, but I do expect her to also get the BJP to make sure that never again will the issue of 370 be raised by that party.
Do you think she'll succeed on that score?
I do.
Because it's very difficult. It's something the BJP at its very core is committed to, and the BJP would be virtually revoking an article of faith if they took that course.
Listen, virtually nothing is left of Article 370. It's there symbolically. Now, even that, if it's removed, there are going to be problems. There are going to be terrible problems in the valley. And secondly, Karan, I can also say this coalition must continue. It must be stable, purely because in the absence of this coalition, I'm afraid regional and communal polarization in that state will go quite beyond control.
Do you share that concern that the fundamental reason why this coalition between the BJP and PDP is absolutely essential is because it's the only mechanism that can bridge the fact that Jammu voted entirely one way and the Valley entirely another? And without this coalition, the divisions, differences and divide would be exacerbated.
Well, that certainly is correct, because the fact is that whether they would be exacerbated or not, I cannot say it, because the circumstances have changed now since the elections actually were held. But certainly, it was a foresight of the Mufti to bring these two together, one representing one side and the other representing the other side. But I would also here please caution that please not look upon it as a Hindu-Muslim thing, because the BJP took a number of seats in the Jammu division, which are Muslim majority areas.
Absolutely.
So this should not be exaggerated to that extent. But yes, there is this potential threat to this to the future of the state, because the state is, you know, divided. There are three divisions of it,
and
three distinct divisions.
The unity of the state, in a sense, requires that this alliance continue.
For the time being, yes, certainly, but unless you can work out other terms and conditions to keep it together. But that would be a very volatile situation if the alliance were to break suddenly, as this.
Tantalizing alternative that the press is speculating about, and it may be nothing more than just speculation, is the possibility of Sonia Gandhi attempting to lure Mehbooba Mufti. People say that the reason she made that visit yesterday was perhaps to entice Mehbooba, even though both sides insist that politics was not discussed. What do you think is the likelihood that Mehbooba Mufti might snap with the BJP and form an alliance with the Congress, particularly given the fact that the two together don't even have a majority, they're only 40?
Yeah. I really cannot speculate on that speculation as such. I think that it will require a bold move for Mehbooba Mufti to do that, number one, and it will take a different tact to politics. And here is where I would disagree that, to bring to try to bring Jammu and Kashmir together, that you needed to somehow, in my interpretation, confirm the communal divide by saying, all right, so all the ones from Jammu will be, majority Hindu, and all the ones from Kashmir will be Muslim. And therefore, there was another way out. And the other way out, I think, is to have a cabinet which will pull together, whether it's with the Congress or the NC or whatever, and
it will probably have to be all three if it's to be stable.
Perhaps, but or the main thing is a government needs to deliver. The fact is that this government has not been able to deliver, at least in the last year that it has. And if a government, whether it was majority Muslim or majority Hindu, it doesn't matter, delivered, I believe that we will have transcended communal divides rather than confirmed it.
Let me bring you in on that point, and let me put the question like this, Dilip Padgaonkar. Is the speculation about the BJP-PDP alliance fracturing, or the speculation that Sonia Gandhi might try and lure Mehbooba, is this all healthy at this point of time, when you are seeing a recrudescence of militancy in Kashmir, and the sense that the people haven't got their just desserts after the floods, the sense that the recompense they should have got from the centre hasn't happened, is beginning to worry people? Is this healthy at this moment, or is it disruptive and dangerous?
Well, first of all, no matter which alternative you look at, the numbers simply don't add up. So if the numbers don't add up, and the alternative then becomes a very shaky alternative, which is worse than the current one. Secondly, I don't quite share this. I'm not really thinking in terms of a communal divide. I'm thinking in terms of a tremendous ferment in the three regions of the state, which has been going on for a long time. There have been pressures coming in from Jammu and from Ladakh, for example, for a greater devolution of powers, something the PDP has accepted, and something which again would go some way to also reassure people in Jammu and Ladakh that their grievances are being met. At this moment, any speculation that the alliance will not continue or not continue for long, I think is
Oh, we've lost Dilip Padgaonkar at that critical point, but I think what he was about to say, if I can guess, is that any speculation at this point that the alliance won't continue is not in the best interests of Kashmir. But that's my interpretation of what I think he was saying. Very quickly, let me end by putting it like this. There is a view that if this alliance does break up, the loser is the BJP. Mehbooba would clearly find another ally and continue in power, even if it's a weak and unstable government. But the loser is the BJP, because after 10 months they'll be out of office.
Well, you see, that may be the loser, I think, would be if a decision is taken rashly. Certainly the loser would be the state. But yes, in that going there, the BJP would be the loser, because it's doubtful whether the BJP in a fresh election would be able to gather that number of seats. But these things have to be carefully thought out. And I would not agree that Mrs. Gandhi's visit had anything more than what Omar has mentioned, or what little I know.
But Omar has no great authority in what Mrs. Gandhi had in her mind.
Nor am I. But the question
Which is why the speculation may be speculation, but it may be something more as well.
But from what I know, and I've worked, as you know, in the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation with Mrs. Gandhi, I think this is very much a fact of her going there.
All right, Wajahat Habibullah,
affection.
I'll concede that point. When you say I know her and you don't, you're absolutely right.
I didn't quite say that.
Your guess about her intentions is infinitely better than mine, and I'll concede your point. My thanks to both of you for joining me. My thanks also to Dilip Podankar, as well as my apologies for losing him at that critical moment, and I hope I didn't interpret him incorrectly. If you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night.
Our top story. It's a sensational claim by senior Congress leader Manish Tiwari. The former Information and Broadcasting Minister has said the controversial news item about the possible military coup in Delhi, published by the Indian